You don't want any more. You want to forget it. But you're going to remember it because it's gone now. It's gone. You're back here now. You're away from Okinawa. You've forgotten it. But you remember who you are now. Who are you?
Men who cannot remember. Paralyzed men whose paralysis is dictated by the mind. However different the symptoms, these things they have in common. Unceasing fear and apprehension, a sense of impending disaster, a feeling of hopelessness and utter isolation.
The night is dressed up for dreaming, and on the meadows below.
The middle class world, that's sort of the American dream, as they say, was not for you. You were an outsider. I couldn't have stood the idea of settling down in a nice family world. And I did try, and it didn't work. Then I had dreams, and those lasted for 40 years. Scenes of violence, death, disfigurement, horror, which I have always carried inside of me. And I feel that's the real possible world. That's the world to which things can be reduced very easily. And this has made it hard for me to function easily in society at times, because I always felt that I might be thrown back into that world. That's the real world. What the hell is this person talking to me like that? I'm going to take a rifle butt and smash his head in. I was always afraid of being reduced back to that. It is a world in which ideas don't count for anything. Sentiment doesn't count for anything. It's just back down to the brutality of conflict. And that big secret world which you have to sort of bury, I suppose I buried that and buried a lot of memories with it. I wanted to get that down and out of it. It came back in dreams.
Es gibt Millionen von Sternen. Unsere Stadt, sie hat 1000 Laternen.
By the late 50s, Germany had become one of the most prosperous countries in Europe. She was also now America's ally in the Cold War. American attempts to denazify those who had run the country had been quietly dropped. Good bureaucrats and businessmen were needed to build a strong state against the Soviet threat. It was in everyone's interest to forget the past.
Jetzt geht's ja wieder aufwärts mit uns. Und man hat es Schritt für Schritt gesehen. Man hat eine Wohnung bekommen, man hat sich satt essen können, man hat sich plötzlich Kleider kaufen können, man hat was verdient.
Schon der Gedanke, dass nicht die
Das war eine gewisse Euphorie. Und in dieser Euphorie haben sie nicht mehr sich bewusst an alles erinnert. Das wollten sie gar nicht mehr, das vorher war. Dieses, was im Hintergrund geblieben ist, das ist natürlich im Hintergrund geblieben.
Das interessiert nicht mehr. Das ist vorbei. Wir haben es überstanden. Wir leben noch, Gott sei Dank, und wollen darüber nicht mehr sprechen. Wir leben jetzt und jetzt für die Zukunft. Und wir sprechen eigentlich von dieser Zeit nicht viel. Das ist vorbei. Ich möchte eigentlich jetzt hier abbrechen, wenn es Ihnen recht ist, gell?
The appearance you might get was that there had never been any Nazis. Nobody had known anything, nobody had done anything wrong, and they were all sort of innocently baffled by the whole thing. But when you started certain discussions in narrower circles where there was less fear of being pilloried for an utterance, there was a great deal of resentment of the injustice of the war. To them, this is a tremendous block of history where Germany was exploding like a nova, radiating across the globe, And that fascinates them.
Deutschland, über alles in der Welt. Und dann kam sofort hinterher die nationalsozialistische Hymne, die hieß Die Fahne hoch, die Reihen dicht geschlossen. SA marschiert mit ruhig festem Schritt. Kameraden, die Rotfront und Reaktion erschossen, marschieren im Geist in unseren Reihen mit. Das mussten wir dann singen. Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Und jetzt auf einmal ging es so zur Hymne. Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Und bis alles gesungen war, musste man da stehen, ob Frau, ob Mann, ob Greis oder Kind. Und wenn das Lied fertig war, dann hat man es so gemacht, rührt euch.
For the younger generation, those who had grown up in Germany in the years after the war, the past was completely mysterious. By the mid-60s, a growing number of them began to ask questions about this strange time, a period of history that neither their teachers nor their parents would discuss. Then, in 1968, came the Student Revolution, and an attempt began to uncover the truth about Germany's hidden past.
I think that in '68, with the Student Revolt, there was the memory knocking at the door. We were thinking at the generation which was not guilty in a very direct sense of this word, and we asked our parents and our grandfathers, what did you do all this time? Did you resist, or had you been a little Nazi, or had you been an opportunist? And this discussion was blocked by the elder generation. And so it became hostile. And so we were hunted and pushed through the streets by the police and by the people in this town.
Germany's past became a central issue for the student movement. Many began to delve into recent history, and what they discovered astounded them. Not only had their teachers and their parents been involved with the Nazi Party, but many appeared to have taken part in crimes. There were terrible confrontations within families.
Und die Jugend, die dann kommt, immer nur sieht, das wurde begangen und ist nicht dazugefügt worden, aber dein Großvater kann im Einzelnen gar nichts dafür, dass mich die Jungen fragen, meine Neffen mit 22 und 26 Jahren, ja, wir werden mit der Schuldzuweisung unserer Großväter überhaupt nicht fertig.
Die ältere Generation hat sich davor gefürchtet, dass nun abgerechnet wird. Dass also jeder, wenn man erst mal anfängt bei einem, also sagt, der war bei der SS, wo war er, dass diejenigen, die neben ihm sitzen, gefragt werden, und wo waren Sie und Sie? Diese Angst, mit in deinen Sog reinzugeraten, hat natürlich eine Solidarität unter den Älteren geschaffen, über diese Zeit nicht zu reden.
Die haben uns nie gefragt, meine Neffen und Nichten, was habt ihr gelitten? Das ist es ja. Nach unseren Leiden ist nicht gefragt worden, sondern nur das, was wir nach außen hin gemacht haben. Das erlebe ich von der Jugend, ja.
It was a complete confrontation. One part of these people against the other.
Ach, das...
The students were convinced that what they had uncovered was a hidden continuity with the Third Reich. Beneath the facade of a liberal democratic country, the fascist state had continued, run by the very same men and women who had administered Hitler's regime. A group emerged determined to expose this. They were led by Andreas Baader and Gudrun Enzlin. Their aim was to resist fascism where their parents had failed. They were known as the Red Army faction.
Dieser Staat hat, wie Sie es nannten, eine faschistische Fresse, die nur mit einer Maske verhüllt ist. Und das war Ihre Theorie, wenn man den verschleierten Faschismus zeigen will, muss man ihm nur die Maske vom Gesicht reißen. Und das geht nur, indem man sie angreift.
The Red Army faction embarked on a series of bombings and shootouts with the police. Their strategy was to use violence to provoke the state into exposing its true identity. But as the violence escalated, some of the terrorist leaders began to have doubts. In trying to expose Germany's hidden past, they had unearthed something far more complex and far more sinister than they had bargained for.
I had begun to realize that fighting against the state by armed groups with this revolutionary strategy in mind was bringing up fascistic tendencies in the reaction not only of the political class, but in the people too. We ourselves became in the same way fascistic as the fascists were. We didn't realize that our enemies, our opponents, are human beings. This is what is in the heart fascism, the oppression of other meanings of the political opposition, and oppression means elimination by killing.
Was it frightening when you realized that that was happening?
Yeah, of course, awfully frightening. This is one of the main points in the development, the awareness that we are from the same stuff as the fascists were. We understood something. We understood that fascism is a component in all of us.
Do you think that's what we hid from ourselves at the end of the war?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We have a picture of ourselves. We want to be good. We want to be human creatures with the positive thinkings and so on. But we are a contradiction in ourselves because we don't know to handle this contradiction. We don't have any means to live with this evil part in ourselves.
In the autumn of 1977, the leaders of the Baader-Meinhof group committed suicide in jail. The attempt to change Germany by opening up its past was over. The threatening memories were reburied.
The memory is a swamp, like this building is built in a swampy area. So in a swamp, something comes up, makes a sound, a noise, boop. You smell something, and then once again the surface is clean and clear, and so this memory comes up sometimes, gives a noise, gives a bad smell, and then the surface is clean again.
But then, 10 years later, the core